All right. Everybody get some energy out, stand up, jump around a little bit. This is going to be the best panel of the day, so just in case you were wondering. We're going to talk about gaming and eSports and how we can apply these things on blockchain. And I always try to avoid saying the blockchain because there's so many of them. And we're sure we'll get into a lot of that here today. Anyway, my name is Steve Beauregard, and most people in the industry know me as the founder of GoCoin, payment processor. We and BitPay and Coinbase were slugging it out for a few years in the early days when we thought that payments was really going to be the big killer app. And since then, we've had a lot of really great evolutions since then. I've got a great panel here today. I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves, just do a quick background, maybe 90 seconds to 2 minutes, talk about your background and then sort of what your entry was into the blockchain space. So, John.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is John Kosner, and my background is in traditional media. For 20 plus years, I was at ESPN, and for the last 15, I was in charge of digital and print media at ESPN. So that was ESPN.com, the app, streaming, fantasy sports, our magazine. And over the last few years there, the most interesting development was eSports because of the audience, the global nature of it. After I left ESPN, I reunited with my former boss, former NBA commissioner David Stern, who is now an investor in 13 small sports tech startups, one of which is called Sportscaster, which is going to launch a fan chain coin and is involved in basically democratizing announcing for different live events. So through Sportscaster, you can get multiple casters on the same live event, which is a key breakthrough in sports television is coming. And I've also had the opportunity to advise a startup called ReadyUp, which wants to be linked in for eSports, and again, is using the blockchain to achieve that. So nice to be here.
Great.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Simon Bogdanovich. I'm general partner and co-founder of Block Team Ventures. We're a strategic advisory investment firm based out of Los Angeles with partners globally. Since 2016, we've advised collectively as a team over 50 projects, which have raised over $500 million. Some of those projects included Ambrosis, Elastos, more recently Hybrid Block, Toon Token, and many more. My background or kind of foray into blockchain was kind of stems from my background professionally, which comes from mergers and acquisitions on Wall Street for the Royal Bank of Canada, coupled with sales and partnership strategy for some mega companies working with the Fortune 1000, including Thomson Reuters and Celligent, intertwined with experience running an international niche marketing agency, working with clients across 6 countries. My very first foray into the space actually was when I was actually involved in Bodog Life and some of the online gambling companies, and I was investing fiat and then getting payout in Bitcoin and kind of selling that out right away in the early 2012, 2013 timeframe. And then we came full-time into the space, or I came full-time into the space with my partner earlier last year, starting as an advisory company, working with operational growth and support, road shows, as well as putting together global marketing plans, which we forayed into an investment firm partner, which we're partnering with Blockchain Industries, who's also based out of Los Angeles, and that fund is called Blockchain Innovations Fund.
Great. All right, excellent. William and I go way back. We actually were 2 of the founders at GoCoin, so we got into payments quite early in the crypto space. But since then, he's been doing some really interesting stuff. William?
Hey, thanks. So I run a company called Opskins, and Opskins allows people to buy or to sell virtual items, not cryptos, but in-game video items. Last year, we decided to try to move that business, and it's a very big business, onto a blockchain. That blockchain is called Wax. And I'm still standing, but I will tell you, it's very, very hard to move a real business to a blockchain. We're getting there, but it's tough. There are great advantages of doing it. but we're about 6 months away from the technology being developed enough to get to the scale that's necessary. So hopefully with EOS doing what it's doing, that'll happen.
Excellent.
Great. Hi, my name is Olive Allen. I'm an avid gamer, visual artist, and the founder of startup in the space. Bought my first Bitcoin in 2013, but I didn't get involved in the community until CryptoKitties came out, and I got really excited about new type of visual goods, virtual goods, NFTs, and I realized the potential of the market, and I realized I have to make something of value, real product that people could use, not only people in the crypto space, but everybody else, Gen Z and millennials. That's how I came up with the concept for Decadent. That's my startup. We're building a social network that enables people to buy, sell, and display in-game items and digital collectibles.
Yeah, CryptoKitties is really interesting. And you know, John backstage mentioned that the Dodgers did a bobblehead on blockchain, which is kind of interesting. I'll just open this question up to anybody who wants to take it on. Do you think that there's a big future for these crypto collectibles? Is it just a fad that's going to come and go, or do we, you know, what do we think?
I'll just take a quick stab. This was one of the first sort of crypto promotions at a traditional sporting event. It proved to be very popular. It's on September 21st. I had a friend who bought a Mike Trout bobblehead, crypto bobblehead for $30 and sold it 2 days later for $250. So
where do you sell that? Where do you sell that thing?
I'm not sure how he did it.
Not sure how he does it.
He did it. The one thing I would say that's super interesting was that in addition to the custody of the crypto bobblehead, you could also utilize an augmented reality copy of the crypto bobblehead.
Like with your phone, you have to hold like a card up or something?
Exactly. But it struck me as an early, interesting example of ways that you could take the static collectible, the baseball bat that sits up on your wall, and actually begin to get more utility out of it.
Right. So is that the kind of thing you would hold possibly on your exchange, William, or are you looking strictly at in-game kind of?
Well, no, there's just not enough volume. Right? These things are still tiny, right? Because the non-crypto portion is about 60 billion annually, which seems like a lot, but then that is global, right? The video game virtual item business is about 100 billion annually in virtual item primary sales, and then about 60 billion in the secondary market. And we try to only focus on things that do like, you know, a few hundred million, probably a month of trading. Otherwise, it's like any exchange. Otherwise, there's no market there, no VIG. What I would say about the things we now call blockchain-based games or NFTs is, as expected, there's many thousands of them now. What's unexpected for me is how radically they've changed since November of last year. The advances in the gameplay, the production value, is what I would have expected to happen in 4 or 5 years. It's happened in 9, 10 months. Those games we're looking at, right? I mean, CryptoKitties is, for all intents and purposes, defunct, right? There's no volume. But there are games that are real games that natively incorporate blockchain-based principles. I'm looking at those. We'll probably add some of those to our marketplace.
Right.
They weren't like bolted on to a game. They're really natively integrated with the game. The fact that that level of thinking has happened in less than a year is very promising. So we'll probably see many more of these going forward. And keep in mind, the vast majority of video game companies disallow in their terms of service the ability for you to trade their item. It is crazy. You spend $100 billion a year on this property, but you're not allowed to trade it for most of them. Right? So that is the big change that NFTs will bring.
If you can say, what are a couple of those games that you've really seen advanced development in a few months that have impressed you? What are examples?
I'm under NDA, so I can't say.
Right.
But they will be out in Q4, and I think they'll be self-evident.
Right.
The production value is superb.
Yeah, I think part of the problem with CryptoKitties is nobody can really connect with it. It doesn't have any meaning. It doesn't
no
connect
game
you to a
mechanic.
brand. There's
Yeah,
no,
there is no game pretty much. I mean,
No.
buy and sell and cash.
So you're a gamer, Olive. How do you see that?
I mean, CryptoKitties, they warmed up the market, but I think it's the first thing that came out of this crypto world. They proved the concept. I think we're very, very early. People don't realize that how actually early we are. And of course, you need a hit game that uses blockchain. Epic, Fortnite, League of Legends is not going to do it. They're not incentivized, unfortunately. I think for it to be bigger, for CryptoKitties be more interesting and exciting, we need a hit game that is built on blockchain. That's essential. But I also believe that collectibles, it's their own thing. They don't have to be utilized within gaming environments.
Right.
As CryptoKitties, they're not really something that particularly useful within any gaming ecosystem, and they don't really have it.
Right.
But they are valuable nevertheless. They are as collectible pieces. People collect things. They collect coins. They collect baseball cards, right? They've been doing it forever. Why can't they do the same thing but in a digital format? And blockchain makes it possible, and it's really exciting.
Right, very good. And so Simon, taking it to like the investment side of things, or I mean, I don't know that the funds would be investing in these kinds of assets. It'd be more probably in the companies, correct?
Yeah, when we're looking for investments, we're looking at equity side, equity investments, as well as potentially token investments. We have a hybrid model, but kind of going back to what everyone's been saying, like I think one thing that blockchains help solve is that black market, the secondary market of trading, because there's transparency, yet security of verifying where these in-game items are being traded and who has the authentic item, and there isn't kind of fraud and fraud because of things are locked into a smart contract. So I think that's a big piece of blockchain solves. And in terms of giving the control back to smaller developers of games versus having the major publishers hold onto the rights, I think blockchain helps enable that to happen on even much smaller marketing budgets and game development budgets, because we live in a world where it's all about looking at advertising through your social networks, through growth hacking, through screens of all different kinds. And so the millennials and Gen Zs of today are more concerned about the experiences they're going to have in games and also auto games, in entertainment and eSports and whatnot, versus what technology is being used underlying to the game that they're playing. Yeah. And developers can come together and partner up and create their own games, and also create these marketplaces where they can exchange in-game items between various games and form partnerships between a Marvel game and a Disney-based game, things like that. So.
Yeah. So John, switching gears a little bit, we talked a little bit about how sports and sports fans have changed, and will continue to change over the years as millennials are less interested in some sports. How do you see that developing? How do you see blockchain aiding in that future?
It's really pretty profound. Rich Luker runs something called the ESPN Sports Poll, and he's been doing this for 20 plus years. And the research for traditional sports shows that the audience that grew up having an iPhone is totally different than any audience before that.
Yeah.
This is and this is going to be self-evident, I believe, to most people in the room, but this is an audience that's used to creating their own sports experience, to having it be portable and personal, which is totally different than what the traditional sports experience has been. So his research shows that traditional sports today is basically being supported by people, mostly men, 35 to 54. So it looks the way it kind of always has looked, except that when you move forward to 2026, 2028, and the younger generation really comes of age, it has the likelihood of being very, very different, because the viewing habits, the avidity for sports, the way people want to have a certain kind of experience is going to be totally different. And I believe that augurs for the growth of esports, the growth of kind of experiences and functions out of esports, for instance, virtual goods. And I believe the traditional sports infrastructure is going to have to follow that lead in order to be able to market to a generation that didn't, say, have the avidity that, say, you and I did growing up for our teams.
Right, right. And so, William, those demographic changes, how do you guys see that? How do you adapt to those as they,
Crypto trading, virtual item trading is 14 to 25-year-olds, right? They don't play traditional sports. While I love eSports, there ain't no money in eSports. Maybe one day, possibly, right? But it's not a business that I would want to invest in.
I disagree, actually. It's becoming so huge. Drake invested in ET. I mean, a lot of people
You're confusing people putting money in and guys making money out. There's no profit in esports today. I mean, that's just a fact.
Yeah.
One day there might be profit, but I've looked at the income statements. They're all losing money. And there's a bunch of structural reasons.
What about
why.
these esports teams that are coming about?
Right. So the esports teams are money losers. Maybe one day in the future, there are structural problems with making money in that industry. It's fundamentally different from traditional participation type sports. Whatever. So one day, maybe, I do think it can be potentially a good way for certain types of sponsors. But today, we've spent a decent amount of money on esports-related activities just to experiment with the value we can get back, and we've not seen it.
Interesting. All of you see it differently.
Absolutely.
I love disagreement on panels.
As a millennial, as someone who grew up playing games and watching esports team going to the stadium, I think I see an immense potential. It's growing very rapidly and gives a lot of young people an opportunity to make money.
But what esports team today, or what esports activity today, do you see just generating a ton of cash? I don't know of any.
Well, I mean, it gives people opportunity to make money on their streaming. For instance, Twitch. Twitch is immense. It's huge. It's kind of a form of esports.
Twitch is a terrible money loser. They've laid off a third of their staff. You cannot make money on streaming video games. No one has figured out a way to do it. I wish they had.
No, there are a lot of young people still, a lot of my friends, they're streamers and they're making income out of their skill. I think it's a great opportunity and opens like a lot of revenue stream.
There's two revenue streams. It's tip jars and sponsorships. Very hard to get sponsorships, and need I say more, it's a tip jar. You don't make a lot of money with tip jars.
Well, for some of the Fortnite streamers, Fortnite streamers are making serious money. I would.
You know what? You can make
it's still
money
3%. Yeah, I think it's still like 3% of the esporting market's actually making some money.
Yeah,
7%
it's a key point that Bill makes, which is it's misunderstood. Gaming makes a tremendous amount of money. Esports today is really fairly nascent.
Yep.
That might be, however, where the opportunity is.
Right.
And you are seeing, again, it's nascent, but Activision, League of Legends, they are rolling out a franchise model. All of the things you see in traditional sports are not really valued yet in esports. The gate isn't worth anything. The merch isn't worth anything. And yet the audience is really, really big. One point I'll make, and this is actually our mutual friend Rob King was telling me. Rob King is the head of ESPN.com today. He was telling me that his son, who's a teenager, streams Ninja all the time and gets incredible value because he feels that he can connect with Ninja on an individual basis, that he can learn how to play better by watching the things, and that he gets something out of that experience that he doesn't get out of traditional sports. Now, you could say that Fortnite is not actually an esport today, it's more of a game, but the fact that it is casual, that it is co-ed, and that it has a connection to a young audience is much different than anything we have seen in traditional sports. And again, it's early days, but that could really begin to grow.
Yeah, I mean, could it be Facebook? Could it be just like early days of Facebook? The big criticism was, how are you going to make money? They're not making any money. And then boom, in came all the advertising.
So what you would say to Facebook is that net Facebook destroyed value in the sense that per impression delivered, right, of the industry as a whole, they made money, whatever the revenue now is, 20 billion a year or whatever, but that would have translated prior to them to maybe 60 billion, right? So they're extracting value, but the overall amount that they're leaving for everybody else is very low. And I think I come from the movie business, right? And it's years ago, I think people are smarter now than they used to be, but some people thought you could get rich being an actor, right? Now we're in LA, so most smart people know you do not get rich being an actor. But wait a minute, look at Tom Cruise,
much richer getting
right?
a waiter, right?
Is it all about getting rich, really? Is it? I mean,
What's that?
people enjoy doing their craft. It's not all about getting rich.
No,
enjoy
but
connecting
if you're
with
talking
streaming.
about as an industry without capital, right, without the way to earn money,
Right.
Resources will be allocated somewhere else. That's just the nature of
We're still very
capitalism.
early. Esports doesn't have that structure as traditional sports. Been around forever. Esports been around for 20 years at most, 15, 20 years. We're still very
I'm
early,
very
but there are
aware,
massive audience, and Gen Z and millennials are so into it.
What I'm
We just
pointing
need
to
to
is a
figure it out.
structural problem. There's a structural problem with companies that are involved in esports making money. That's all. I mean, when that changes, you can do it. But as far as us, my company, we love the sport, but we don't know how to return value to shareholders from being involved directly.
Right.
Yeah, the monetization channels just aren't fully there yet. Yeah, I agree with you, William, about you can monetize through sponsorships, whatnot. But until there's like a its own league, the NBA for esports or whatever it is, and there's a whole ecosystem built around it that's encapsulating it. Right now, there's all these different big publishers having their own esport.
Yeah, the
arenas
publishers,
all
by
over
the way, are
place.
doing pretty well.
Yeah, they're
because they're
Talk about
creating
that.
leagues.
Yeah, let's talk about the publishers, because I know that at Wax you've had a little bit of a battle with some of them. What are you doing, and how do you see that marketplace?
I see it exactly the way I thought it would turn out. Anytime you introduce a new technology to an existing industry, if they adopt it, then they will use it in a way that they're already doing something, right? They'll better, faster, cheaper. They'll use it to do something they already do, but it makes
Cost cutting.
right? Cost cutting or whatever. Act two is to actually do something that they never could do before. It's too big of a leap for most of the big video game companies to go there. If you have a decent franchise, you're not going to upset that, right? You're going to wait a while. It's just like traditional retail when the internet got around, right? It took a decade before them to be willing to risk their core franchise. So the companies that are going to be pushing the envelope, and likely the companies that will do the best, I think are the native, blockchain-based companies that just adopt the blockchain-based model and then build games. And as I said, I think we're beginning to see that, right? And then in 5+ years is what I'm guessing, some of the traditional video game companies, maybe they'll be struggling or something. They'll say, okay, maybe we should adopt some of these behaviors as well. It's just a natural progression of new technologies.
Right. Right. Yeah. There's always that period of time where somebody's building new technology and there's a lot of resistance. You have to overcome that resistance, and that's usually painful.
What you experienced with traditional payment companies.
Oh, yeah.
When you did GoCoin.
Right. The early days of GoCoin, we thought we were going to sign up everyone from Domino's Pizza to United Airlines. We were talking to all those guys. We could get a meeting with absolutely anybody. Right. We walked into Walmart, and it's the #1 retailer in the world, and had a meeting with 13 people in the room, and we went out with just educating the market, and it's sort of crazy. And
I'm also wondering just with gaming, whether or not you'll have like a sort of Amazon Web Services thing that will happen with blockchain, where some of the excess capacity, maybe all these miners can provide the means of a better experience. We've been waiting for the arrival of like cloud gaming as opposed to having to play these games just on one's console. If you got to a point where that experience could be sort of delivered to you and the server's doing the work, it could be profound in terms of what could change here.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big things that we're missing in this ecosystem is actually that user experience, that UI UX, and the onboarding and making it seamless, and not knowing that the consumers in the back end are actually utilizing blockchain technology in one aspect or another. I think that's a huge missing piece that this hasn't been figured out yet. Versus having a wallet address, wallet to wallet, having slow transaction speeds because of network congestion. For thinking about, should I build my blockchain-based gaming company on my own protocol, or should I build out another protocol? And is there interoperability, between that? And
Well, speaking of user experience, Olive, you're building something kind of unique. Why don't you tell
Right,
people what you're doing?
absolutely. User experience is #1 problem, why nobody's using dApps, and each dApp has 1.5 user a day average. Unfortunately, user experience.
But it's a social media gaming kind of hybrid.
Absolutely, and user experience is a very important thing. You need to get people to use your app, and with traditional apps, people drop out. They have to type their password twice. 10% dropout rate.
Wow.
I mean, imagine if people have to go buy Bitcoin, buy Ethereum, and then go to some exchange and buy your native coin, and then download your app, and then
the one thing we did
transfer
learn-
that coin, and then hopefully they'll get to the point.
The one thing I have learned, though, when they're motivated to do so, they'll absolutely do it. If
Yeah.
they really want whatever that product is, that whether it's a skin, whether it's a certain product
I
or website,
understand,
they'll
but
go through it.
you
And the most uneducated people will even go through that process, and they'll figure it out if they really want the product
You can't
or use
expect
that
that from users. They
Right.
have, I mean, new generation especially won't just like download the thing and get to it, and it's our job to provide that experience.
Right.
Companies creating the space, they have to understand it's all about experience. To get users, you have to provide that experience that is easy, that's understandable. It doesn't matter if it's run on blockchain, on off-chain, or whatever chain.
Right.
If it's on EOS or Ethereum, people just want to get to the point and use the thing that they came to the app for. That's it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think in the back end of that, it's important to think about hybrid systems, so both centralized data depositories and decentralized, and the benefits of both, right? And today, with the centralized data depositories, it's speed and scalability are there, right? Most major gaming companies are utilizing that, but with the decentralized piece of it, there's that security, there's that transparency, there's knowledge like, hey, I'm getting this unique item in game or wherever that is secured by smart contract. It's not hackable. It's not being duplicated and sold on a secondary market or even on a primary market to multiple people if it's a bad.
And part of the problem we're having with those decentralized systems is the scalability problem, which has been, we've been battling that on.
Although I think we've solved that problem, right? Everything will be side-chained. I think that's the consensus.
I think that's the way it's going to go.
And it works. Yeah. You cannot operate a commercially scalable business on a mainnet, period. Won't work, and no one.
Do you think that's forever? Do you think that's just a short-term problem? Do you think that's sort of long?
Well, we'll never go back. We were on Ethereum, almost killed us. We'll never go back. And I think most business people, once they're burned, they won't go back either.
Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin is very good for very large transactions, large dollar transactions, fine. But the second you get into anything call it $500, it's just you're better off using a credit card.
Well, back when Ethereum, everybody get the point. These main nets are like highways. Anyone can join them anytime they want. People don't plan for who's getting on when. And the way you deal with congestion is you boost the prices, which is an easy thing to understand, which is perfectly fine if everybody's trying to send a big dollar transaction. Oh, I got to pay a little bit more, it doesn't matter. Our transactions average under $10. We were paying 50 cents to create an item on the Ethereum blockchain. And then within a matter of seconds, because a bunch of congestion hit it, it took $51. So we're selling the thing for $10, but it costs $51 to create it, right? It went from taking 90 seconds to transfer an item to taking 17 hours to transfer an item. Who's going to wait around for 17 hours?
Yeah.
So while we knew these were theoretical problems, when you actually have a business that's having to deal with that, you realize you can't do it. So I guess it's conceivable one day these chains, these main nets will be more reliable, but I think all the creative energy right now is going to go on side chains.
Side chains, yep. Yep, could be. So back to more of traditional sports, John. Do you see any other applications or things that could drive a lot of adoption? Or
Yeah, I mean, last week Ticketmaster purchased a small blockchain company called Upgraded, which basically uses smart contracts to do game tickets. All of their transactions had taken place off-chain because there's not the ability to do it. But the beauty of the discussion around the smart contract illustrates a key conundrum in traditional sports, which blockchain can begin to address, which is that you have all these fans all over the world and you don't know who they are, and you can't really transact with them. And the entire industry is beginning to move towards direct-to-consumer as traditional pay television shrinks, but there aren't logical systems to do that. So for instance, with the company that Ticketmaster bought, they can now understand where a ticket started, who has it, if he or she sold it on the secondary market, exactly what it went for, and then who actually walks into their building,
Right.
which has the potential, again, it's early, has the potential to be profound because most entities don't know who their customers are.
Yeah.
So when I look ahead, what makes me excited is really the sort of reinvention of what it means to be a fan and a follower of a team or a player or a league, and then beginning to create systems that can incentivize people and reward them for doing the kinds of things that they do anyhow and that you want them to do. But today they're largely taken for granted.
Interesting. Yeah, we're starting to get to our wrap-up question. So let's just sort of give a 3-5 year projection of what we see in blockchain and developments. What are potential killer apps? What are some of the characteristics of things that we should look for, or people in the audience should look for? And we'll just go down the line. We can start on the far end if you'd like, Olive. Put you on the spot.
Sure, I'm really excited what's going on in the space. We're very early days. People don't realize how early we are. Crypto world is being hyped up by the token trades and etc. But it's very early. It's hard to tell who's going to be the winners, who's going to be the losers. Most likely, 95 of the companies are going to be gone. And I've been seeing a lot of great games have been built. I mean, there are attempts to it. My platform hopefully is going to be relevant in 5-10 years. I'm hoping for that, but let's see what happens. Well, I'm really excited about that new space of digital collectibles and in-game assets. I think it's the first and biggest consumer use case. I think that's mainstream crypto adoption is going to happen through that, definitely. So yeah, I'm very optimistic on the way it's going, even though they call it crypto winter.
Right.
Winter, I doubt it. I think it's a great
crypto
time
winter
right
number
now.
3, so don't.
Right now it's a great time to build something.
Yeah, it is a great time.
It is a great time. It's the best time.
Yeah. William.
Enterprise adoption, that'll start happen with us. It's probably a 5-year process, but it's happening now. Lots of tools, development tools to allow enterprise to adopt blockchain-based services, which will drive a whole lot of creativity. On the video gaming side, we see it. We work with many hundreds of aspiring video game companies that are trying to turn themselves into blockchain-based companies because of the things you can do with the virtual item that you can't do with a traditional server-based virtual item. So I see that as being important. I think it will be a long, long time before all video game companies adopt the advantages you can get with the blockchain. But in a few years, you will see some very popular video games that have adopted the mechanics that you could only do with the blockchain, and I think consumers will like it. We found with Wax Express Trade, which was a replacement for the, God forbid, MetaMask. MetaMask is the browser you use on Ethereum.
Yeah.
It is truly, it's truly painful. When we started to allow people to put virtual items on Wax Express Trade, those items became the most traded items on blockchains globally. Not because maybe they were the best, but because you could do it, no cost, thank you EOS, really fast.
Right.
So that's the consumer friendliness factor coming in. So you're seeing a lot of development that's going to push blockchain and blockchain-based gaming. Again, in a year probably, there'll be probably at least a dozen games. Many people are playing a lot. Nothing like, Gen 1, which was CryptoKitties.
Right.
Yeah, from the investment angle, institutional adoption, having big institutions that we all know coming into the space, investing, beyond Horowitz investing in CryptoKitties and others. I think another big play here is that we're going to see the enterprise adoption as well, but a lot of it's around, kind of falling off the old guard, and it's allowing, like I was speaking about before, new developers, new gaming developers, new, companies like Atari, who, obviously everyone knows from the 80s, coming back into the spotlight and issuing their own token and creating their own gaming ecosystem, and how that interplays with Steam and other platforms that, like, the millions of consumers are already on. So it's going to be a matter of tying in those, going to where the consumers already are and tying in these new technologies, new games, and pulling them through there. I think it's also going to be a big blurring in the coming years of blockchain and machine learning, artificial intelligence, beyond gaming, Internet of Things for supply chain and many other uses. And that combination, we're going to see a big movement into personalization of everything that we do. Even in the household, from walking into the room, is the room set to the right music, light, room temperature, whatnot, to gaming, to identifying other friends, other clans that you should be joining. What are the spotlighted in-game items that this person would most likely go after, and then highlighting them like people who bought this item also consider this item like Amazon-like, and just kind of personalization of everything, especially in-game experience. And as we move into AR and VR, having that even be more so, and almost where I don't think we're going to be there in 3 to 5 years, but getting more to that state of Ready Player One potentially, and in the facet of putting on a headset or having the mobility of really feeling that you're living and breathing in the game, and being able to transact and do everything you do in the real world, like just in that game, without kind of having to step out and utilize a few different devices for microtransactions or what have you.
The whole crypto world is a global community, and so things can move and happen very fast. I've just been struck in the last year and a half at the growth of Fortnite in eSports or just in gaming. Totally different, casual game, mobile, multi-platform, co-ed, and then the rollout of talent like Ninja making $500,000 a month reportedly for his Twitch channel. So one of the things that I believe you're going to see are player channels come to all sports. Not necessarily today's veteran all-stars, but young athletes coming up who are much more media savvy, creating their own channels on Twitch or other networks, and then using that to create some powerful interactivity with a new level of fan base that wants that sort of connection with their heroes.
Right, good stuff. Yeah, I think the enterprise adoption is definitely coming. So my company, Block, our customers are the Discoverers, Fidelity, Citigroups of the world, and we're definitely seeing all of them doing vastly different things. But with Morgan Stanley, Fidelity made a big announcement this week. So it's all of that is coming, and then also the companies that are in the blockchain space, what I call the blockchain 50. Have realized that this is going to be a multi-chain, multi-token, multi-coin world. And with that, you need to figure out how to interact with these big organizations now. Money's going to start moving in different ways than we've seen, and value start moving in different ways than we've seen before. So
yeah, and when all that happens, or as that happens, like we see in every tech cycle, developers are the scarce commodity. That's been existing up until now. Maybe it starts to get a little easier. They command high salaries. It's very hard to hire them and all that. I'd probably say over the last 2 years, we're seeing a lot more people. So, until there's blockchain educated developers, along with product people, it's hard to imagine businesses adopting it, because somebody's got to build the stuff. Right? Which is why companies like Block exist.
Yep. And Kingsland Academy is another one that I advise on. They have a whole university for training blockchain developers. They've got curriculum for not just the developers that already know how to develop, that want to learn blockchain, but just from scratch, they'll teach you how to develop and then how to develop for blockchain. And the salaries they're commanding, I can remember all sorts of different technologies in the past. Now this one, I mean, these kids are coming out of these academies getting 6-figure salaries. So anybody in the crowd have a kid who wants a future-proof business, learn how to code. And that's really very much so. So anyway, any final profound thoughts along the panel? We got a couple of seconds left here. Don't let it.
I would just throw out that it's also going to be impacted by other macro developments, 5G, which is going to come in, okay, which I think is going to enable a lot of the things that Simon was talking about. And within sports, legalized gambling. Yeah. It's going to be, that's how Simon first got that. That's going to be profound and is going to drive its own set of development.
Yeah, that was a market that we also chased at GoCoin in the early days, spent about a year and a half hitting heads with regulators all throughout Europe and couldn't get them to move off the dime on it. But it's all coming. It's going to take some time, but there's a lot of progress being made. So with that, I wanted to thank our panelists here and appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Sure.